Hi, everybody. I am Catherine Rose, CEO and founder of GetWise. GetWise provides on demand expert advice to help small businesses, entrepreneurs, and professionals accelerate their business or career growth. Our nearly 1,000 experts from around the globe provide affordable one on one advice that helps people go farther faster in their business or career. And today on Ask the Expert, we have with us Natalie Berthe. She is a GetWise expert and a serial entrepreneur, writer, and activist who is passionate about business, social impact, and human empowerment. Her work has been featured in Fast Company and Gender Vendor. She's also the founder and CEO of Cybersecurity for Humans, a company that specializes in the human element of cybersecurity. So, welcome, Natalie. Thanks so much for
Thank
joining us today.
you. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your journey and why you're so passionate that you founded this company around cybersecurity for humans.
Well, there's a couple of things. One of them is when I was doing a lot of startup consulting with startup companies, there was consistent problems that to me just seemed really obvious. And it was really centered around the issue of privacy and security. It's like handing off all of your passwords to your web developer without understanding what's going on. It's clicking through links that, why is my computer frozen? We've got ransomware coming up. And so the more I delved into it, I realized nobody was talking to the people that was using it, right? Like everything was very tech based. And so when people would see, DNS and DDoS and whatever all these other letters and acronyms, it was like a whole other alphabet, a whole other language, nobody understood it. And so I just started to start talking to people and start doing this. And I decided to do a deep delve. I started interviewing and working with hackers and then also some military cybersecurity specialists, and then started translating it to the way the rest of us could actually understand it. And I feel, it's not getting any better, right? Cyber issues online is not getting any better. People are having their stuff stolen, and it's getting more and more expensive, and it's getting more and more complicated. And all the tech in the world is not going to overcome human, I'm going to be diplomatic about this, ingenuity for doing something differently, right? Like we've all done it. We're like, how did we just manage to go around and get to this? So that's where my passion came out about this. And nobody is kind of talking to anybody who isn't like a, eight figure company. We need to all be talking about it. We have to be responsible for our own safety online. And no, very few people are. Who aren't
Yeah.
really.
And I mean, I heard some alarming statistics like 43% of all online attacks are really targeting small businesses, right? And then from there, like over 60% of small businesses close as a result of a cyber attack. So, within 6 months, wow. And I mean, it's not like we don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's not like people haven't heard of phishing or, but let's talk about that. Like what are the most common ones that you see that give you pause today?
Okay, so I just want to actually add to something you said earlier. 43% is a lot that's targeted to small businesses, but people think, I've got better than half a chance. Small businesses are 3 times more likely to be targeted than a large company. Right? So that 43% you've got to remember is small businesses versus medium and large businesses, and also personal people, right? Other people. So the things that I see most often happening are probably, people get hacked all the time and they don't understand how they're doing it. They assume that they were actually targeted. I actually saw a YouTube company, they're content producers, and like, hey, we got big enough that we got hacked. And I watched their entire thing and I went, yeah, no, that was just the luck of the draws because somebody had some really bad passwords, right? It was somehow got into the thing, and it's just so easy that if someone actually does want to target you, there's not a whole lot you can do. So, but one thing that people don't realize is if you are actually being targeted, even if it's not, if somebody really wants to break into your system, they will. Like that's
Yeah.
just that's
It's
going to
like
happen.
anything, right? Like, they can
Absolutely.
put all the securities at the local bank. They could even put like guards outside. And if someone really wants to break into that vault, they're going to do it.
They'll figure out how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, but most of the time, and this is what I heard from multiple hackers, was that if you could like make it complicated enough that it takes them more than 5 to 10 minutes to break into your system, they're going to skip you and move on to the next person. So really, the only job that we have is to thwart them for 10 minutes. Like, and then,
and again, I mean, using an analogy, it's the same thing. Like when you read about people breaking into houses,
right,
they've interviewed like burglars, and the burglars are like, listen, if you simply just put a beware of dog sign in your front, window, we're probably, or just even a fake, we're protected by such and such security
right.
system, right? So anytime that you give off this vibe that it will take them a long time to get there, they're not going to bother, basically, is what you say.
If there's so many people who aren't doing anything, then why should they bother spending their time on you? And so that's just what we have to do.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about some of the, like, even just the simplest. Let's pretend that these, folks that are listening have nothing in place. What are the simplest steps to get started? And then we'll talk about folks that do have, some things in place, what more advanced things.
So there's if somebody has nothing, and I hate to say this, but in a recent study, 20% of women entrepreneurs literally have nothing.
Yeah.
1 in 5. That to me is like way too high. And men aren't much better. They're like 17% don't have anything, but it's still like that's too many people don't do anything. It might actually be higher. It might be 33%. I've got to look back at the stats. But so if someone is doing absolutely nothing, at the very bare minimum, right? There's two issues. You want protection, and then you want to be able to recover. Because if you don't have the protection and you don't have the recovery, you're just completely SOL. Like there's not anything anybody can do. So at the very, very bare minimum, you need, I'm trying to also think like at the bare minimum, I would say you want unique passwords for everything, right? As complicated as, but people aren't necessarily going to do that first off. So I would say, make sure you get security software, right?
Okay.
Like the McAfee, Norton, Bitdefenders of the world, because what they do is they will say, hey, this is a safe website. We scan these kind of documents, and they cover all sorts of malware. So that's the first thing that I would recommend. The second is make sure you have a backup. And so people go, oh, I have my terabyte right here. Right. But if somebody breaks into your house, you don't have that terabyte anymore.
Right.
Right. Again, you've got to, or you end up in a situation, like Ian just happened, Hurricane Ian, and your house is flooded and now you still don't have it. So you really need a physical backup. So the terabyte's actually a really good idea, but you also need another backup offsite. Sorry, I'm half Italian.
No, please. Yeah. So you're
So
saying that they need an on-premise, so like a terabyte drive or something that lives in their house or their co-working space or whatever, and then also an offsite like a Google Drive or Microsoft Teams or some kind of
I would do Google. I mean, Google Drive is fine, but it's not. That's sort of what you call like a mirror drive. Like it kind of copies what you can have that, or OneDrive. I was even thinking just a full backup, something like Carbonite, or I mean, it becomes like it's in the cloud. It's completely in the cloud. It's encrypted. It's backed up, and you set it to back up every single day. So if you do 3 new files today, it only backs up those 3 new files. The first one's always really long. And then the third thing I would say is to start getting used to dealing with different passwords, different email addresses, different passwords, and you do those things, and it's a really good start. I mean, there's a lot more holes, but
No, I hear you. And what about because a lot of small businesses today, they don't even really have websites. They run things through Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. And so, maybe it's just something as simple as turning on that 2-factor authentication, which is a little bit irritating, honestly, because every time you go to log in, it sends something to your phone. But you know what? That just in of itself, I have had so many people I'm involved in a lot of networking groups and Slack communities, all this stuff. So many lately, especially that hacked Instagram, hacked Facebook, hacked TikTok, and they get shut down and they cannot recover. And we're talking about like millions of followers that they've spent.
Uber just had that happen, right? It was actually a multi-factor authentication that they called it MFA fatigue, which is somebody kept sending and sending and sending. And I don't actually understand how that's fatigue. More like, and they probably pressed the wrong button. My guess actually is that's the person pressed the wrong button rather than it was like, oh, fine, I'll just let you in, right? But it's somebody got a hold of their credentials in the first place to be able to do that. So that's a huge problem. Well, MFA has turned out to be super, super effective for getting into websites. But the problem is that not all websites, and not even most websites, are using MFA yet.
Yeah.
And including a lot of the tools that we all use. And, and third-party MFA programs like Authy or Duo or Google Authenticator or something like that.
Firebase, yeah.
Yeah, they all have like the third-party MFA is more effective than your cell phone because they can hack your phone number. Like, if somebody really wants to get in, they'll get in. Yeah.
So it's almost like you have to plan for the worst and just, at least prepare as much as you possibly can and then plan for the worst, right? So you turn on your two-factor authentication. You do some things as simple as updating your WordPress website and plugins, right? When they have updates.
Always have to do that.
Yeah, update your browsers. Like you do the simple things, but then when you plan for the worst, like pretend tomorrow someone came in and, and shut you out of your own website. Like, how are you going to, to
recover from
back
that?
up? Recover from that.
It's actually, it sounds like, you're right. What you're saying is absolutely correct, but really it's about developing new habits. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's, you don't cross the street. Like when you're a little kid, I remember when my youngest was about 3, he just refused to look both ways to cross the street. And he and I got in a huge fight about this because he was stubborn. And I remember I was at my mother's house. We went to the front door. We pretended that her front walkway was the street. And for an hour, we practiced looking both ways, right? And now, he hasn't gotten hit by a car. So I feel like, we were successful in that endeavor at 15 years old. But, that's the thing that we have to learn. And when we are online, just like we would never cross the street without looking both ways, right? Or if we're in the States and we're going to some place that drives on the opposite side of the road, instead of looking left to right, we need to look right to left. It's a new habit we need to develop. And it's the same thing with going online. We have to and then once you start doing it, you do it. So it's like, I don't live in fear. I'm not nervous. I just have new habits that I've acquired in order to make sure that I'm not, going someplace that's not going to work, right? Like I've got to make sure that how I share, my access to my VAs or anything else that I'm doing, or I'm going to this website? What am I looking for when I'm doing that? So it's really about learning new habits. The problem is that people don't like change.
Yeah, right. Well, and also too, tying off on the truly like the small businesses, like the micro businesses,
a lot
of folks feel like it could be very expensive. So talk about that a little bit. Like what do you see is the, as that, I think it's a fallacy of the expense of being even just marginally more secure than you are right now.
Well, I will tell you this. So I actually asked this of somebody who has been in business for I don't know, 20 years. And I was like, how much do you think it would cost you? And he was like, at least $5,000. And I'm like, yeah. So no, I am probably, with my new habits, I am paying less than $300 a year.
Okay. A year. So that's really not that expensive if you think about it.
It is it's less expensive than liability insurance, right? And which, by the way, people should be having cybersecurity liability insurance as well in case you do get hacked or anything like that. That's not something that we think about. But if you want contracts with larger businesses, but you're paying for your security suite, you're paying for backup, and you're paying for usually a password management program. And those are the big expenses that you have. After that, everything else is free, right? Microsoft and Chrome and everybody else, they want you to constantly update. Apple,
Exactly. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
automatically update. And people like, oh, I didn't know I needed to update my phone, right? I didn't know it was required. They don't send an update out so that you can get access to a new shade of blue. They send they send out updates because they're trying to cut off a security vulnerability that they found. And
Right.
so
Right.
when you realize that so much of this, sorry, street cleaning.
It's okay.
God, I love living in this city.
Yeah.
I got to remember not to do this during. So it's just a matter of no, I just completely lost my train.
No, you're just saying it's just a matter of making sure that you do the updates because it's not yeah.
And most of them are automatic, right? Like Windows will automatically update and iOS will automatically update. The problem comes in is that your browsers will not automatically update. You have to manually do those updates. Sometimes apps on your phone automatically update and sometimes they don't. And so you need to check that kind of stuff. Speaking of your phone apps, go and get rid of the ones that you aren't using. And anyone I always okay, I'm playing this game. Why do you need access to my contacts? This, we got to be really careful as to what we're doing and what we're offering, our information. Ultimately, we're responsible for ourselves. All, like I said earlier, all the technology in the world will not overcome human ingenuity. So
again, the micro businesses, I mean, they might have virtual assistants or people like that. So, is it a good idea to get into some kind of a habit or start off with an internal policy? And what should be in there?
Okay, so yes, it should automatically be. I actually had an entrepreneur say to me, well, I'm using a VPN. Is that good enough? No, that only tracks somebody to not follow you around online, but I don't care how unpopular you are. You're probably not that interesting, right? We're not, somebody who's we're not Hillary Clinton who's got to worry about, or Trump or whomever is to worry about their stuff getting in. Sorry. Right. What we really need to do when we're dealing with VAs is we need to make sure they are on a VPN for a variety of reasons, and we need to because especially in certain countries, like one of my VAs doesn't have access to TikTok, because India doesn't allow TikTok. And so we have to make sure that they are on VPNs so that they can be effective, but also because we don't ensure the level of security in that. We also should have policies. Like, how are you using this? One of the things that I always tell people is you need multiple email addresses. Like, people are like, oh, I just use it all in the same thing. It's just easier that way. No, it's easy. It's easy to miss who something is from. It's easy to kind of confuse all these things. And if you're using all the same email address, then you can go to have I been pawned and pull up that email address, and you'll see how many times that email address has been involved in a hacking of some sort. So it's now what you include in a cybersecurity policy. It comes down to just a few things: how you use the tools that you have, right? The level of security that you expect it to be used, and then the third thing is the constant education, just constantly being updated as to what's going on. In a large company, for example, you don't get access to Wi-Fi for your device. Mm-hmm. You don't use on your phone, you can't use Wi-Fi because they want to make sure that their intranet is as secure as possible. And they don't know how good you're taking care of your phone.
Mm-hmm.
True. And so to give you an idea, there's been several stories of when people from one of the U.S. national security agencies has crossed into our coming back home, and the TSA has taken their phone, right? Because they want to whatever the real is, right? And that is national security, right? So now that person has to go back and report. There's it ends up being a major kerfuffle because now people who should not have access to national secrets have access to national secrets. And from what I've read, there may be some policies in place to be like, yeah, leave all of your devices at home. We give you a clean one. We don't store anything on the phone anymore. And you've got to make sure it's locked in a very specific way so that nobody can access it, right? Like there becomes this, and we kind of need to be thinking like that at all times.
Okay.
Like IoT, nobody ever changes their Internet of Things. It's pretty much everything connected to the internet that's not your computer, including the, do you remember the story? Was it last year, a couple of years ago, about the girl who was messaging on Twitter through the refrigerator because her mom had taken away all her devices because she was on social media too much. And so there was some questions about whether or not that was a hoax, but it turns out that refrigerator did in fact connect to Twitter, which I don't really know why I'd want my refrigerator connected to Twitter, but LG thought it was a good idea. But if they can get in because you have not made sure that the IoT is changed, the password and the factory set password, then they can actually access everything. I mean, you're only as safe as your biggest leak. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. So yeah. So, and I mean, maybe it would also make sense, like if you have work for hire agreements, perhaps one of the things they should say, sign off on is that I've received these cybersecurity policies. These are the tools we use. This is what we require of you. So at least, you have some semblance of, security practices internally. You mentioned a couple of programs. Can you just run us through like some of the recommended tools that you have in your toolbox?
Sure, absolutely. So I use a password management program that's like, and it doesn't matter which one. Yes, I'm going to take that back. It does. I would not use a browser one, and I would not want to use one that the Apple one, which I want to say is like KeyPass or something like that. Unless every single one of your devices and you will never need it on anything else, then you're fine. But I use a mix of PC and Apple, so I don't use that. But you don't use a browser because your browser is always open. So you want to use something like LastPass or LastPass or NordPass or one of the many Dashlane. There's a whole bunch of them. The second thing is a backup software. I use iDrive. Carbonite. iDrive always has a really good discount for the first year, like super cheap, like $17 a year or something like that. And then it's like $90 a year after that. But like a LastPass, if you're using, most of them are running about the same price. It's going to cost you, I don't know, like 40 or 50 bucks a year. It's not expensive. It's not okay. Expensive. Then the backup, right? So that's the backup, the security software, McAfee, Bitdefender, Norton Utilities. Those are running, I guess they're probably running about $100 a year, 120. Sometimes it's a little bit less if you're getting a discount. So that's not that expensive. And what's useful, especially if you're abroad, is a VPN. And VPN, you can get free VPNs or you can get VPNs that cost money. What you want to do for yourself is to make sure that wherever you are, that the VPN has the network to support you, right? So you can't go to, I don't know, China on certain VPNs because they may not have the thing. And the VPNs, like I said, run from free to up to like $12 a month. So if you're adding the VPN, the quick math on that is literally about maybe $350 a month with a VPN a year.
You mean a year? Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think too, just traveling nationally, like, when you go to these different hotels, my cybersecurity friends like flip out the fact that I plugged my USB port into the wall at the hotel and plugged my phone in. It's convenient, it's easy, but they're like, that is the easiest way, like, because the hackers could put, you know what I mean, and steal information. So
where you go like to the airport and they give you a whole bunch of wires. Sure, go ahead and plug that in, and someone will suck all your stuff off. It's a great way to get it done. Yeah, good charge though. So
yeah, good luck to you, right? Well, that, and I think that so the VPN when you're in the hotels and in the airports and stuff like that, it
Starbucks.
But it's like anything, it's like pay now, pay later, right? So you have to make the decisions what's right for you. But thank you for this, thank you for these tips. And as we close out, can you give our audience like the three things that they should do, right now that would make them more secure going forward?
So I would say the multi-factor authentication, if it's an option to do it, but that's never enough. each of your accounts need to have a unique password, because if they figure it out for one, they're going to test it for everything. I know somebody who actually just had that happen this summer. 50 accounts she had to get redone. You really want to learn. We didn't talk anything about phishing, but it's been all over, and I've got some stuff on my YouTube channel about that. But you need to understand what to look for phishing so you don't fall for it, right? Like, know that the IRS only mails you stuff. They don't send you emails. They don't they don't call you. And then the third thing I would say, or fourth, depending on how you're counting it, set up your automatic updates as much as you can. It's kind of shocking how many people don't do it. Like, if your system says, hey, you have an update coming in, automatically say yes.
Okay, fantastic.
Automate and forget, and that's a huge piece of it.
I mean, as you said, it's better to be at least prepared. You could say, I tried everything. If a process breaks down, and then you have your backups, it's the best thing that you can do, for your business, for your clients too, right? Nobody wants to be the person, and that company that you mentioned earlier was like, oh, hey, we're so big that we got hacked. No, that first of all, it's not funny, right? If I was a customer of that company, I would not feel good about the fact that the company that I was with was so big that they got hacked. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But
well, they were popular. They were content creators, but I understand the temptation to sound like that. And I think that's what people assume. They have IT people on staff, but the IT people aren't going, hey, we really need to implement these other things, because IT people are working on the back end. This is why my company, this is the human element, is the stuff that we can focus and we can fix and have. Hence my name, Cybersecurity for Humans.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone today. And thank you, Natalie, of course, for joining us.
Pleasure.
And if you'd like to get more advice on cybersecurity, head over to Natalie's expert profile on getwiseconnect.com. We'll put the link into the chat. And if you have any other burning business or career questions, of course, we here at GetWise are here to support you in your business and career growth. So thanks again, everyone. Thank you again, Natalie, and we will talk to you next time.